kids, welcome back to another 5-minute Bible story. We finished our faith, hope, and love conversation last week. This week we're going to start something new and something very exciting. We're going to start talking about living with Jesus. So what does that mean for us? Jesus isn't here physically like he used to be. He's not standing in front of this camera filming this video like I am. He is with us in spirit, and he's in our hearts when we ask him there. So we're going to talk about what it's like to live with Jesus. Specifically, this week we're going to talk about how Jesus makes us strong. So we're going to start off with a story about a time the disciples were sitting around a dinner table with Jesus. They were just saying all the things that they had seen Jesus do, all the miracles he's done. One disciple shared about how Jesus had healed a lame man and made him able to walk. Another one shared about the time they saw him walk on water. And another one said, "You fed thousands and thousands of people with just a couple of loaves of bread and a few fish." And they were just kept sharing all these amazing miracles they had seen Jesus do. Jesus was sitting there listening, but then he just stood up and he said, "I have to leave soon." Peter, being Peter, who was the loud one in the group, was like, "Jesus, where are you going? Can we come with you?" Jesus didn't really answer his question, but he gave him some very important information that he would need later. He said, and this is John 14, verses 6 and 7, he said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, then you know my Father. You do know my Father, and you have seen him." So what does that mean? He was saying that you can't get to heaven, which was where Jesus was going, unless you knew Jesus, and in return, you knew the Father, who was God. So that's how we get to heaven. We have to know Jesus. We have to ask him into our heart so that we can be with him in heaven someday. So the disciples didn't know this, but this was actually the night that Jesus was arrested, and he was taken and put on trial and crucified a few days after this. And that means he was killed, he was put on a cross, and he was buried. 3 days after his burial, though, he resurrected. He came back to life. He spent about 40 more days on earth, and then he left and went to heaven. So you might be asking, "Mr. Jeremy, why are we talking about living with Jesus whenever Jesus went back to heaven?" So like the disciples, this time they didn't have Jesus there with them in person. But that doesn't mean that Jesus was not with them. It's the same for us. Jesus might not be here in person, but we have him with us in our hearts and in his spirit. So let's take a look about a few chapters ahead in Ephesians, chapter 6, verses 10 through 11, where Paul is talking about how to be strong in Jesus. He says, "Finally, trust in God and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you may take a stand against the devil's schemes." So, what is this armor of God? It's actually going to be what we're talking about for the next 3 weeks. Today, we're going to talk about the belt of truth and the breastplate of righteousness. So, in case you don't know what the full armor of God might look like or what armor is in general, here's a picture of what armor is so that it can remind you. It's sort of what like knights used to wear back in the day when they used to go into battle. They'd put on their armor, they'd have their sword, and they'd go and fight for whatever it was they were fighting for. So like I said, we're going to start by talking with the belt of truth and the breastplate of righteousness. So, the belt of truth. What good are belts? So I know that we can put a belt around our waist so we can hold up our pants so they don't fall down and everybody laughs at us. That's one good use for a belt. We see superheroes actually have utility belts, like Batman. He had his utility belts with all of his pockets. You could pull something out, he'd have a batarang. You pull something else out, he had a grappling hook. You pull something else out, he threw it on the ground, it was a boat. His bat belt was just awesome, and it was just very useful. Our belt is the belt of truth, because truth is one of the most important things that we can use to defend ourselves against the devil and evil in general. Because sometimes bad things or bad people will try to make us think wrong things. Sometimes when life gets hard, we start to think, "Oh, God is not happy with us, he's punishing us." But in reality, the truth is that God is with us and he's protecting us, and he's going to make things better eventually on his time. So that's why we put on the belt of truth, and we need to remember that God's word, the Bible, is the absolute truth. If it's not in the Bible, or if it's something that says something opposite of the Bible, then that is wrong and it is not true, and because of our belt of truth, we should know that. So next we have the breastplate of righteousness. What is righteousness? So righteousness is basically just living and acting in accordance to what God thinks is right. So that means that we do what is right, we say what is right, we think what is right, but most importantly, it is a heart. It is our heart. We have to believe in what is right. The breastplate is what covers our whole chest, and it protects our heart. That is why we have the breastplate of righteousness. If we do what is right, and we talk about what is right, and we know what is right, and we believe what is right, then we can be protected against all the things that the devil is going to try to trick us. Like we have our belt of truth to keep us from not knowing the right things. Then we have our breastplate of righteousness to do the right things. So these aren't physical things. You're not going to get an actual big metal breastplate and an actual belt of truth. But these are things that we have to practice using to fight against the devil and his schemes. So that's the end of our story and our talk about the armor of God today. So we're going to move on to my favorite segment, and I'm going to ask a fun question. Today, I'm actually going to ask the question because I've been looking forward to asking this question for a long time, just for this conversation about the armor of God. So here is my fun question for the day. Which superhero do you think has the coolest armor or the coolest costume in any universe, in DC, Marvel, anything you want? It could even be like PJ Masks. Which superhero do you think has the coolest armor or costume? So for me, my favorite armor is Iron Man's new suit with his nanotech technology, meaning that like he has it in his little his arc reactor on his chest, and he just pushes a button and his entire suit forms around him. It's really cool because it's compact. He can put it on anytime he wants, and he doesn't have to go and do that huge change like in the earlier stages where he had to go stand there and let the robots put all the pieces on him. So I think that Iron Man's nanotech armor was his coolest suit, and probably is the coolest suit of all time. So go ahead and comment below or record a video talking about your favorite character. Maybe use some collectibles like these to show your character and what their armor looks like. But anyways, that finishes our time today. So I will see you next week for our 5-minute Bible story. I look forward to that. See you, kids.